The courtroom in Bridgewater felt cold this morning. Rain pattered against the tall windows as Emily Watts stood before Judge Richard Clark. Her navy blue coat looked expensive but simple. Her brown hair was pulled back neatly. She tried to stay calm as she waited for the judge to speak. "Ms. Watts," Judge Clark began, looking down at his papers. His glasses sat low on his nose. "You were ticketed for parking in a handicapped space at the community center." Emily felt her cheeks grow warm. She knew this charge was real. The parking ticket had arrived at her house 3 days ago. Even though she felt it was unfair, she came to court prepared to explain herself. "I understand the importance of these spaces, Your Honor," Emily said. Her voice was soft but clear. "I only stopped there because I was late for the free coding class I teach every Saturday." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Free coding class?" "Yes, sir. I volunteer at the community center." Emily explained carefully. "I teach teenagers from Bridgewater how to write computer code. Many of them can't afford private lessons." Judge Clark shuffled through the papers again. He saw that Emily had no parking violations on her record before. This was her first offense. "The law doesn't make exceptions for good deeds, Ms. Watts," he said firmly. "These handicapped spaces exist for people who truly need them." Emily nodded. "I know, Your Honor." That day, all the regular parking spaces were blocked by construction trucks. The only open spot was a handicapped space at the far end of the lot. The blue paint marking the space was so faded I could barely see it. The courtroom felt warmer now as Emily spoke. A few people in the gallery leaned forward to hear better. Her story seemed to interest them. "I took a photo of the faded marking before parking," Emily continued. She opened her handbag and pulled out her phone. "Would you like to see it?" Judge Clark waved his hand. "That won't be necessary. I see you have also written a letter to the court explaining the circumstances." "Yes, Your Honor." Emily kept her hands folded in front of her. "I didn't want to make excuses. I just wanted to explain what happened." The judge studied the letter she had submitted. It was handwritten, polite, and brief. Emily had taken time to write it carefully. "Tell me more about these coding classes," Judge Clark said, setting down the letter. Emily's face brightened slightly. "We meet every Saturday from 9 to 12. I started teaching when I noticed how few teens in Bridgewater had access to technology education." "How many students do you teach?" 15 this semester, Emily replied. "Some students asked to bring their younger siblings, so now I have 3 age groups. The youngest is 8 years old, and the oldest is 16. Judge Clark removed his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth. He seemed to be thinking. "And you do this voluntarily?" "Yes, sir. The community center lets us use their computer lab for free. Sometimes local businesses donate old computers or software." The clerk approached the judge's bench quietly. She handed him a note. Judge Clark read it quickly, then looked back at Emily with a strange expression. "Ms. Watts, this note mentions something about a tech company. Are you involved with technology professionally?" Emily hesitated. She never liked talking about her work in situations like this. She worried people might think she was bragging or trying to avoid the ticket unfairly. "Yes, Your Honor. I run a small technology company here in Bridgewater." "A small company?" Judge Clark pressed. "Well," Emily said carefully, "we started small. 2 years ago, it was just me and my spare bedroom. Now we have 42 employees." The courtroom buzzed softly with whispers. People seemed surprised by this information. "What does your company do?" the judge asked. "We create educational software for schools," Emily explained. "We make learning games for children who struggle with reading and math. Our programs are designed to be affordable for public schools." Judge Clark put his glasses back on. "And you still find time to teach coding classes?" "The community center was where I learned to use my first computer," Emily said. "A volunteer there taught me when I was 12. I grew up here, just like these teenagers. Many families can't afford computers or internet at home." The judge leaned back in his chair. He looked at Emily differently now, as if seeing her for the first time. "I see you have strong ties to this community, Ms. Watts." Nevertheless, the parking violation stands. I must treat all cases equally under the law. Emily expected this answer. She nodded respectfully. I fine you $150 for parking in a handicapped space without proper authorization, Judge Clark announced officially. The end Emily turned to leave the courtroom. She reached for her handbag, trying not to show her disappointment. The fine would mean less money for buying new computers for the coding class next month. But she understood the judge's decision. Rules were important. Ms. Watts, Judge Clark called suddenly. She stopped at the gate that separated the courtroom from the gallery. Yes, Your Honor? The clerk had rushed back to the judge's bench. She was holding a newspaper and pointing at something on the page. Judge Clark read quickly. His eyebrows rose higher with each line. Please return to the stand. Emily walked back slowly. The room felt different now. Curious eyes followed her movement. She wondered if there was a problem with the paperwork. I understand from our clerk that you are Emily Watts of Tech Connect Solutions. Emily felt her stomach tighten. Yes, Your Honor, that's my company. Judge Clark studied the newspaper article. The same Tech Connect Solutions that recently received £3 million in government funding? We were very fortunate, Emily said quietly. She didn't want to sound proud or important. The article says you plan to create 200 jobs in Bridgewater within the next year. Emily nodded. That's correct. We're opening a new office in the old textile mill on River Street. The courtroom buzzed louder now. River Street had been empty for 5 years. The textile mill closed when the factory moved to China. It had been a sad day for many Bridgewater families. You're bringing 200 jobs to our town? Judge Clark repeated. We are, Emily confirmed. We need programmers, designers, customer service representatives, and support staff. Many positions will be entry-level, perfect for people just starting their careers. A woman in the gallery gasped. My son applied there last week, she whispered to her neighbor. Judge Clark set down the newspaper. He looked around the courtroom as if seeing everything differently. His face showed confusion and perhaps embarrassment. Ms. Watts, I must ask for your forgiveness. I see now that I didn't recognize you. There's nothing to forgive, Your Honor, Emily said kindly. I prefer to be treated like everyone else when I come to court. The judge shook his head. Nevertheless, I realize now that I may have been too quick with my judgment. Tell me more about your company's plans for Bridgewater. Emily relaxed slightly. We want to hire locally whenever possible. We're also planning to create apprenticeship programs with the high school. Students can gain real work experience while finishing their education. This all sounds remarkable, Judge Clark admitted. He glanced at his clerk. Why wasn't I informed about this before the hearing? The clerk looked apologetic. The article only published this morning, sir. I just noticed the connection when I saw the defendant's name. Judge Clark turned back to Emily. I understand your company is also sponsoring the new Children's Science Center? We're one of several sponsors, Emily said modestly. And we're donating coding equipment to all 5 primary schools in town. The gallery murmured approval. Many people in Bridgewater had worried about their children's education. Budget cuts had removed computer classes from most schools. Ms. Watts, Judge Clark said slowly, I make decisions every day based on law and precedent, but today I realize I've been somewhat hasty. Your commitment to our community is impressive. Emily smiled gently. Everyone in this room loves Bridgewater, Your Honor. I'm just doing my part. Judge Clark cleared his throat. Given these new circumstances, I'm reconsidering the severity of this fine. While I cannot dismiss the violation entirely, I can reduce the amount. That's very kind but not necessary, Emily said. I broke the rule even if accidentally. The fine is fair. The judge paused, impressed by her response. Your humility is admirable, Ms. Watts. How about this? Instead of a monetary fine, what if you performed community service? Emily's eyes lit up. I would gladly do that. Excellent. I sentence you to teach 1 additional coding class per month at the community center for the next 3 months. The courtroom erupted in scattered applause. Even the court clerk smiled. Thank you, Your Honor, Emily said warmly. This is better than any reduced fine. As Emily gathered her belongings to leave, Judge Clark stopped her once more. Ms. Watts, would you consider speaking at next month's town council meeting? Our community leaders should hear directly about your plans. Of course, Emily agreed. I'd be happy to answer any questions. This time, when Emily left the courtroom, she walked with a lighter step. What had started as a frustrating parking ticket had become an opportunity to connect with her community in a new way. The end. The rain had stopped by the time Emily left the courthouse. Sunlight broke through the clouds, making puddles shimmer on the sidewalk. She walked slowly to her car, thinking about the morning's strange events. Judge Clark had surprised her. Most people in authority didn't change their minds so easily. She respected that he followed the rules even when learning about her business later. At lunch, Emily sat in her favorite cafe on Market Street. The owner, Mrs. Peterson, brought her usual order without asking: tomato soup and a cheese sandwich. How was court? Mrs. Peterson asked, setting down the plate. Interesting, Emily replied. She told the story while other customers listened nearby. Judge Clark reduced your fine to teaching extra classes? Mrs. Peterson shook her head in amazement. He's never done that before. Usually he's stricter than any other judge in town. Emily stirred her soup thoughtfully. I think he's just a fair man trying to do his job. That evening, Emily received an unexpected phone call. It was Judge Clark's clerk. Good evening, Ms. Watts. Judge Clark would like to invite you to speak at the Rotary Club next Thursday at 7 o'clock. Emily was surprised. The Rotary Club included Bridgewater's most influential business owners and community leaders. They met at the Grand Hall in the town center. Did the judge ask for anyone specific from Tech Connect? Emily asked. No, ma'am. He specifically requested you. Emily agreed, though public speaking made her nervous. She preferred writing code to giving speeches. The following Thursday arrived quickly. Emily chose a simple black dress and comfortable shoes. She arrived at the Grand Hall 15 minutes early. Old photographs of Bridgewater lined the walls. The textile mills in their glory days. The river before the factories came. Children playing in the town square. Judge Clark stood near the entrance, greeting arrivals. When he saw Emily, he walked over immediately. Thank you for coming, Ms. Watts, he said warmly. His formal courtroom manner was gone. Tonight he seemed like any other community member. Thank you for the invitation, Judge Clark. Please call me Richard tonight, we're not in court now. The hall filled with familiar faces. Mr. Thompson from the hardware store sat next to Dr. Harris from the medical center. Ms. Chen, who ran the bakery on High Street, chatted with Officer Johnson from the police department. When Richard introduced Emily, he spoke differently than in court. Our speaker tonight started teaching herself programming at 12 years old. She built her first website for the library when she was 15. Now she's bringing 200 jobs to our town. Applause filled the room. Emily stepped to the podium, her notes trembling slightly in her hands. Thank you all for coming, she began. When I was a child, my family struggled financially. We lived in the apartments behind the old post office. My mother worked 3 jobs just to keep food on our table. The room grew quiet. Many people remembered those apartments. They had been torn down 10 years ago. One day I got sick with fever. Mom couldn't afford a doctor, so we went to the free clinic. While waiting, I noticed an old computer in the corner. It didn't work. The screen was broken. Emily smiled at the memory. I asked the nurse if I could try fixing it. She laughed and said, "Go ahead, but don't get your hopes up." Several people chuckled. I spent 2 hours taking it apart and putting it back together. When I plugged it in, the screen flickered to life. The nurse nearly dropped her clipboard. What happened next? Someone asked from the back. The nurse told the library director about the computer repair. They had 5 broken computers in storage. I fixed all of them in exchange for free internet access for a year. Dr. Harris raised his hand. That must have been Mr. Williams at the library. He loved collecting old technology. Yes. Emily nodded. He taught me that knowledge should be free for everyone. That's why I started the coding classes at the community center. That's why Tech Connect creates affordable educational software. She continued explaining her business plans. The new office would train employees in emerging technologies. Local students could apply for paid internships. The company would partner with schools to update computer labs. Bridgewater gave me my start, Emily concluded. Now I want to ensure the next generation has even better opportunities. When she finished, the applause lasted longer than before. Richard stood and walked to the podium. Thank you, Emily. We often judge people too quickly. Sometimes we miss seeing the whole picture. He looked around the room. I've realized that successful people don't forget where they come from. They return to help others climb the same ladder they used. After the meeting, several business owners approached Emily with ideas for partnerships. The bank manager offered special loans for her employees buying houses. The school superintendent wanted to discuss the apprenticeship program. Richard Clark waited until the crowd thinned before approaching Emily again. You've given us all something to think about, he said. Including myself. Emily shook his hand. We all learn from each other. As she drove home that night, Emily felt grateful for the parking ticket that had led to this moment. The following Saturday, Emily arrived early at the community center for her coding class. 3 new students waited at the door. She recognized them as the Thompson children from the hardware store. Good morning, Emily greeted them. Did Mr. Thompson tell you about the class? The oldest, Michael, nodded eagerly. Dad said you could teach us to build websites, is that true? It is, Emily confirmed. Today we'll start with the basics. Inside, she found Margaret Hayes already setting up chairs. Margaret was the center's volunteer coordinator. She helped with everything from organizing bingo nights to managing the food bank. Emily, something wonderful happened yesterday, Margaret said excitedly. Judge Clark called me personally. He wants to donate new computers to our lab. Emily was touched, but not surprised. The judge had changed since their court meeting. When class began, 15 kids assembled around the old computers. They ranged from 8 to 16 years old. Some had never touched a keyboard before. Emily started simply. Today, you'll each write your first line of code. It's like giving instructions to the computer in a special language. She wrote on the whiteboard, Hello, Bridgewater. Type exactly what I write, she instructed. Don't worry if you make mistakes. We all do when learning. Fingers tapped slowly on keyboards. Some kids squinted at the screens, unsure of themselves. Others typed confidently, already familiar with computers from school. 30 minutes later, the first success came. Young Sophie. Bennett's screen displayed Hello, Bridgewater in bright blue letters. She squealed with delight. I did it! I really did it! Her excitement spread through the room. More screens lit up with the same greeting. Soon, every student had accomplished their first programming task. During the break, Emily noticed Richard Clark standing at the classroom door. He wore casual clothes, a sweater and jeans instead of his usual suit. I hope you don't mind, he said sheepishly. I wanted to see what my granddaughter talks about so enthusiastically. Of course not. Emily glanced around. Which one is your granddaughter? Lucy, he pointed, the one fixing Tommy's keyboard. 9-year-old Lucy was helping 7-year-old Tommy with his sticky spacebar. She pressed each key patiently, showing him how to clean underneath with a cotton swab. She's very helpful, Emily observed. Her mother says she talks about this class constantly. Last week she asked me if judges use code to write laws. Emily laughed. What did you tell her? I told her that good laws and good code both need to be clear and logical. They both solve problems. After class, Richard approached several parents, picking up their children. They clustered near the door, discussing the parking lot mess that morning. The construction company blocked half the spaces again, grumbled Mr. Park, whose daughter was in the class. I nearly parked in the handicapped spot like someone did last week. Richard glanced at Emily, then spoke carefully. I heard about that situation. Someone explained that the marking was very faded from the rain and construction. Mrs. Abbott, whose 2 sons attended the class, joined the conversation. Those spaces need better marking anyway. With all this construction lately, it's hard to tell where you're supposed to park. You're right, Richard agreed. I'm going to speak with the construction manager about keeping the parking lot clear during activities. These classes are too important to be disrupted. Later, as Emily packed up her teaching materials, Richard approached her quietly. I wanted to apologize again, he said. Not just for the parking ticket, but for how I saw you that day. I've been thinking about my courtroom habits lately. You were doing your job, Emily responded honestly. Maybe, he said, but watching these children today, seeing how they look at you with such admiration, I realize how much good work can be missed when we don't look closely enough. Emily considered his words. Everyone makes quick judgments. Sometimes it's human nature. Still, Richard insisted, I pride myself on fairness. Watching you teach, seeing Lucy's joy in learning makes me wonder how many other stories I've missed in my courtroom. They were interrupted when Lucy ran over. Grandpa, did you see? Ms. Watts says next week we'll make our own games. Richard lifted his granddaughter up. Is that something you want to do? More than anything, Lucy bounced excitedly. I want to make a game where you solve puzzles to help people, like being a nice judge. Emily and Richard exchanged amused looks. That sounds wonderful, Lucy, Emily encouraged her. We can definitely do that. As families left the center, Margaret handed Emily an envelope. This came for you yesterday. From the mayor's office. Emily opened it. Inside was an invitation to join the Community Development Council. The mayor wanted input from local business leaders about town improvement projects. Will you accept? Margaret asked. I'm not sure yet, Emily admitted. My schedule is already full. Richard overheard. You should consider it. The council needs voices like yours. People who remember what it's like to struggle but who also know how to build something better. That evening, Emily walked through downtown Bridgewater. The old textile mill loomed against the darkening sky. Soon it would buzz with activity again. She thought about all the lives that would change when Tech Connect moved in. At the corner where River Street met Main, she noticed the community bulletin board. Someone had posted photos from her coding class. The caption read, Future Programmers of Bridgewater. Standing there, Emily realized how interconnected everything was. A parking ticket had led to new friendships, community connections, and unexpected opportunities. The town's future was being shaped by small acts of understanding. The end 6 months. After the courthouse encounter, Bridgewater buzzed with transformation. The old textile mill gleamed with fresh paint and new windows. Tech Connect's logo hung above the entrance, welcoming employees through renovated doors. Emily arrived early this March morning to oversee final preparations. Today marked the company's first day in their new headquarters. 42 employees would fill the bright office spaces, and another 50 positions remained open for local applicants. Morning, boss, called James Miller, a recent engineering graduate from Bridgewater High. He was Tech Connect's first local hire. The computers arrived yesterday. Setup crews worked all night. Perfect, Emily smiled. Ready for the big day? Absolutely. My mom's bringing lunch for everyone. She's too excited to let anyone else cook. Emily understood completely. The town had waited years for good news like this. Families needed hope, and Tech Connect brought both opportunity and pride. At 10 o'clock, the official opening ceremony began. Mayor Williams stood on the front steps surrounded by local officials and community members. The high school marching band played as television cameras captured the event. Richard Clark stood near the front. He wore his best suit, though this wasn't a courtroom appearance. His granddaughter Lucy bounced beside him, wearing a programmer's t-shirt Emily had gifted her. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Williams announced, today marks a new chapter for Bridgewater. Tech Connect Solutions represents more than just jobs. They represent belief in our community. He gestured toward Emily. Ms. Watts could have built her company anywhere. Yet she chose her hometown. She remembered those who helped her and resolved to help others. Emily approached the microphone, her prepared speech forgotten. Instead, she spoke from her heart. Everyone here knows what it's like to chase dreams despite obstacles. This building once held machines that clothed America. Now it will house computers that educate the future. She paused, looking at familiar faces in the crowd. Success isn't measured by what we achieve alone, but by what we create together. Tech Connect's success belongs to all of you. After the ceremony, Emily conducted tours of the new office. Parents proudly walked through hallways where their children would soon work. Teachers explored the educational technology lab where they'd develop classroom materials. During a quiet moment, Richard found Emily by the window overlooking River Street. "Quite different from our first meeting," he remarked, chuckling at the memory. "Very different," Emily agreed. "I still keep that parking ticket, you know. It reminds me that challenges often hide opportunities." "I keep it too," Richard admitted. "In my desk drawer, next to Lucy's first coding project." They watched construction workers finishing the new parking lot. Each handicapped space displayed fresh, bright paint with clear reflective markings, suggested extra visibility features, Richard explained. The town council approved immediately once I explained why it mattered. "Change happens one careful decision at a time," Emily observed. That afternoon, Emily gathered Tech Connect's first day at the new location. The main conference room filled with employees, some familiar faces from community events, others new, arrivals attracted by opportunity. "Before we begin our work," Emily addressed the group, "I want to share something. 6 months ago, I stood before a judge for a parking violation. I was frustrated, worried about the fine affecting our startup budget." Several employees smiled, having heard this story from others. "That experience taught me something important. Sometimes misunderstandings lead to understanding. Challenges become bridges." She looked around the room. Judge Clark now serves on our community advisory board. The lawyers who processed our legal documents came from our first coding class. The construction foreman updating our building learned programming from online courses we created. Emily's voice grew warm with emotion. "We're not just changing Bridgewater. Bridgewater is changing us." As the meeting continued with business discussions, Emily noticed Lucy and Richard at the glass doors. They waved eagerly. She excused herself. "Momentarily. Grandpa brought me to see your office," Lucy exclaimed. "Is it true you have a special room just for testing new educational games?" "We do," Emily confirmed. "Would you like to see it?" As she led them down the hallway, Emily overheard Richard speaking to a journalist. "The best judges learn to see beyond surface judgments," he explained. "Sometimes the most important cases teach us more than we teach them." The journalist scribbled notes. "Is that why you're involved with Tech Connect's advisory board?" "Partly," Richard replied, "but mostly because Lucy asked me to. She dreams of becoming a programmer who creates fair and accessible games for everyone." In the testing room, bright colors covered the walls. Prototype games displayed on multiple screens, each designed for different learning styles and abilities. "These help kids learn reading through puzzles," Emily explained to Lucy. "And these teach math using virtual adventures." Lucy's eyes widened. "Can regular kids use these, not just smart ones?" "Every kid is smart, Lucy. Some just learn differently than others." Later, as evening approached, Emily found herself alone in her office. She opened the drawer where she kept her first business documents. The parking ticket lay between the original company registration and their first investment letter. She smiled, remembering how things had unfolded. A simple parking violation had sparked conversations leading to town improvements, educational initiatives, and stronger community bonds. Outside, the streets of Bridgewater were livelier than they'd been in years. Young professionals walked to cafes. Students gathered at the library's new computer lab. Former mill workers proudly donned Tech Connect badges as they headed home. As Emily prepared to leave, she noticed a note taped to her office door. Written, in careful child's handwriting, it read, "Thank you for teaching us codes, now I can code too." Lucy, Emily folded the note carefully, placing it next to the parking ticket. Some reminders deserve to be kept forever, not as markers of mistakes, but as testaments to how understanding can transform a community. The end universal message. When we choose understanding over judgment, every misunderstanding becomes an opportunity to build bridges. Communities grow stronger when we recognize that helping others ultimately helps ourselves.